What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my Draftkings MMA picks for UFC Vegas 84. We got Magomed Ankalaev going against Johnny Walker.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out.
And we are back for the first DraftKings breakdown of 2024. Really glad to be back. We've had a couple weeks off with no UFC. It's been boring. But we have fights back, and a really good card to come back to. UFC Vegas 84, we have 12 fights here, and a card that I'm really looking forward to from a DraftKings perspective. We have a lot of potential finishes on this card, a lot of fights that are heavily favored and inside the distance. I think we're going to have some really big DraftKings scores as well, so you're looking forward to breaking it all down. And again, really glad to be back doing videos and content for you guys. Before we get into it, though, if you guys could please do me a favor, leave a like on the video, subscribe here to the channel. It is always much appreciated. The best way to support me. Another way to support me is checking out dfsbythenumbers.com. There you'll find a ton of DFS content behind the scenes, the content you do not see on YouTube here. You get the fighter stats, the targets, projections, ownership projections, rankings, DFS article, lineup optimizer, and then new for 2024, going to be doing a Prize Picks article breaking down my top 5 plays on Prize Picks, as well as a Prize Picks entry each and every single week. And speaking of Prize Picks, this video is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code DFSBTN. Get yourself a 100% deposit match bonus up to $100. With all that out of the way, I say we get into it, guys, and we're going to start with the fight. Doesn't go to decision lines for this card, and yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. I mean, this is crazy this week. We have a ton of fights that are like heavily favored and inside the distance. Here's 4 of them here. The first one, Weston Wilson going against Silva, minus 1,600. Minus 1,600 for the fight to end inside the distance. I'm not sure what's going on here, but yeah, I mean, this fight should finish. Weston Wilson's a guy that typically does not go the distance first and foremost, but Weston Wilson's also a guy that typically does not even see the second round. I think it's been like 11 or 12 fights since Weston Wilson's been to the second round. So yeah, I mean, Gene Silva is 9,600, the most expensive fighter on the slate. He's a minus 900 favorite. Gene Silva should go out there and finish Weston Wilson within the first 5 minutes. I think is a solid play. And in terms of like a dart throw, you know, Weston Wilson's not the worst dart throw ever. Like, if this fight hits the mat, Weston Wilson's very dangerous. It's just he doesn't really try to get it down to the mat, and you know, I think Silva probably does knock him out. But yeah, it's a fight that should be targeted. I think somebody's getting finished here, and I think it's in the first round. If this fight reached the second round, I'd be fairly surprised, let alone go the distance, especially. Moving on, we have Nicholas Mota going against Tom Nolan, and we have a fight doesn't go to decision at minus 1,400. Another fight that should finish probably under 1.5 rounds. Both these guys have a ton of power. These guys both want to do the same thing, which is stand and bang until one man falls. Both these guys are very defensively irresponsible, but we have one guy in Tom Nolan who's 9,200, and then we have the other guy, Nicholas Mota, who's 7,000. I think Nolan's a great play. I think if he wins, it's going to be a knockout. We've seen Mota finish so many times. 5 losses for Mota, all 5 of them being inside the distance. I don't trust the chin, the confidence of Mota at this point. That's why Nolan's a pretty big favorite here. But at the end of the day, you know, Tom Nolan's making his debut coming off the Contender Series. He's not really proven, and he's very defensively irresponsible, and he's down to stand and bang until one man falls, and that's a dangerous game to play with Nicholas Mota. So I think somebody's getting served here. I think somebody's getting knocked out brutally, and it's a fight that is must target this week. Moving on, we get the main event. Magomed Ankalaev going against Johnny Walker. Out of these 4 listed here, this is probably the one I'm least looking forward to playing from a DraftKings perspective. I think Ankalaev probably goes out here and wins, but my gosh, he's so expensive, 9,400, and quite frankly, he's not that great of a scorer on DraftKings. Outside of maybe an early knockout, you know, I see this fight getting extended. Ankalaev is extremely low volume. Like, I could see this fight playing out very boring. So I could see Ankalaev mixing in some takedowns, not doing a ton, and just doing enough to win a decision. Like I said, maybe he does knock out Walker, who's very chinny, but Ankalaev's not one of these guys that's going to go out there and force a finish, put himself into danger. So I could see not a ton going on here, and this fight is going to be high-owned. It's the main event. I could see myself potentially getting away from it a little bit. Obviously, you don't full fade it, but I could see myself being a little bit underexposed at this main event. If anything, maybe the dog and Johnny Walker at a very cheap price tag could make a lot of sense here. Moving on, we have Bruno Ferreira going against Phil Hawes. And another fight that should end inside the distance. We have Phil Hawes, who is 7,900, and then we have Ferreira, who is 8,300. Yeah, I think somebody's getting knocked out here. Both these guys have a ton of power. Phil Hawes, I think he's the better fighter here, but the problem with Phil Hawes is the chin, and you really don't want to be questioning your chin against Bruno Ferreira, a guy that does hit hard. But if Phil Hawes' chin holds up, he's winning this fight. That's a big if, though, with Phil Hawes, right? So it's a tricky fight in that aspect of things, but, I'm going to be fairly split on this fight. I think maybe a little bit more Ferreira potentially. I do lean towards him finding the knockout, but Phil Hawes is an extremely live dog. I think he's the better fighter. It's just the chin is very worrisome on the Hawes side. Let's get to our core plays here. We got Waldo Cortez Acosta, 9,500. I think Acosta is one of the more safer fighters on this card. He's going against Andrei Arlovsky, who, it's hard saying a heavyweight fighter's safe, but Arlovsky is a guy that doesn't have a knockout in a very long time. The last time Arlovsky has a knockout is probably like 2014, 2015, like a long, long time ago for Arlovsky, and he's had a ton of fights since then. Arlovsky's now almost 45 years old at this point, making him the oldest fighter on the roster by a mile, and Arlovsky just got knocked out by Dontel Mays, which is just, it's not a good look at all. If Dontel Mays is going out there and knocking you out, I think Acosta can very well do the same thing here, and I think Acosta does knock out Arlovsky within the first 2 rounds. 9,500, expensive, but I think he's somewhat safe, and I think he has some upside as well. Next, we got Ricky Simone, 8,600. I like the upside Simone brings to the table here. Like, in a win, I think Simone actually has one of the highest ceilings on the slate, because this is a guy in Simone who just has a crazy, crazy wrestling pace. This is a guy that's landing almost 6 takedowns per 15 minutes. It's just incredible. This guy can wrestle. We've seen Mario Batista get taken down by guys like Jay Perrin, guys like Damon Blackshear. Ricky Simone, if he wins this fight, it's because he's able to get takedowns, control time, some ground strikes. And if Ricky Simone does win this fight at 8,600, I think he puts up a massive score here. It's a guy like Simone, outside of the potential durability issues for Simone. That's kind of the one thing that's always scares me with a guy like Simone. He has been finished 3 of his 4 losses, but as long as that durability holds up and he does go out there and get a decision win or maybe even a finish himself, I think Simone has a very high ceiling at this price tag. Next, we got Jim Miller, 8,200. Yeah, I think there's a lot of line value here on Jim Miller at 8,200. These DraftKings salaries, they opened up a little bit ago at this point, and money's been pouring in on Jim Miller the last couple days, and now Jim Miller, I think last time I saw him, like -140, and I think that probably continues to get wider and wider. A lot of people are on Jim Miller this week, and rightfully so. I'm on him as well, and that's because, Jim Miller, there's a lot of reasons. Jim Miller, although 40 years old, looks to be still very much going out there and looking good. He's looking really good, whereas Benitez, he's only 35, but I'm starting to worry about the durability of Benitez a little bit. I'm starting to worry about the layoff of Benitez. Like, he's not fought in a long time. I'm not sure what's going on. So yeah, Jim Miller, super durable, have shown no holes in his durability, whereas with Benitez, there has been holes. He has been finished quite a few times as of late. So yeah, I think Jim Miller has a really good chance to go out there and not only win, but finish this fight as well. Jim Miller is a finisher. That's what he does, and it typically comes early at 8,200. I think there's some solid value there, especially with this line movement coming in late. And then Manel Kopp, 9,000. Another play that I think is like somewhat safe with some upside as well. I do like Kopp quite a bit this week, as a lot of people do. This line's been completely blown out. I think Kopp's almost like -300. Obviously a very popular parlay piece this week in Manel Kopp. And yeah, I like him to win this fight. I like him to go out there and probably get a finish. Nicolau's been finished in all 3 of his losses. I don't like the durability of Nicolau. Kopp's been fighting a lot more aggressive. I think we're going to see a much different version of Kopp than we did almost 3 years ago when these two fought last. And I think Kopp, if he does come out here aggressive, he does get that knockout. So I like Kopp at 9K. I'd like him to win. I like him to go out there and finish as well. We'll move on to the GPP plays here. We got Gene Silva at 9,600. And yeah, Gene Silva has a floor of probably a first round finish, right? The fight to end inside the distance, -1,600. The fight to end under 1.5 rounds is -350. That's like Terrence McKinney range there. So it's crazy, but yeah, I think Silva goes out there, probably finishes Wilson in the first round, probably by knockout, and probably pays off that price tag. I think is a solid play this week. Matthew Semmelsberger, 8,400. This is a fight that was not on the the first screen in terms of like the fights to end inside the distance lines, but it's one that I do really like to end inside the distance, Semelsberger Parsons, and it's a fight that I really want to target. This fight is actually probably one of my favorite fights to target on the card, just because it's a striker versus grappler matchup, Semelsberger being the striker and Parsons being the grappler. On the feet, Semelsberger has a ton of power, and I think Parsons is a little bit of a liability on the feet. We saw Giles just hurting Parsons left and right. We saw D-Rod just destroy Parsons on the feet. Semelsberger has incredible power in this division. I think like 10 knockdowns in his career, Semelsberger does. So on the feet, it's Semelsberger all day. With that said, we'll talk about Parsons. Parsons does have a path with the wrestling, with the grappling. I think somebody's going down here. And at these price tags, I think the winner scores very well. Bruno Ferreira, 8,300. We talked about him a little bit. He's going against Hawes, who, like I said, Hawes is an incredible fighter, just doesn't really have durability, and durability is very important, especially against a guy in Ferreira who hits very hard. Like that's the one thing he does very good, is he hits very, very hard, and that's worrisome against Hawes, who just can't seem to take a punch as of late. I mean, Hawes has like 5 finished losses. He's not getting any younger. His shin's not getting any better. I think a Ferreira first-round knockout is a pretty live outcome this week. And then Tom Nolan, 9,200. We talked about him a little bit. I think he's very live to go out there and finish Mota, who, just like Phil Hawes, I think has durability issues. I think, Mota has confidence issues. I mean, he looked terrible against Trey Ogden. Just looked like he didn't want to be in there. Looked like he had no motivation, and Trey Ogden pretty much destroyed him in that fight. He was on his way to like a 30-27, 30-26 decision up until that no contest situation. But, I mean, just not a good look. And Nolan's going to go in there, and he's going to bring the fight to Mota. And if Mota is lacking that confidence, I mean, Nolan probably knocks him out. So I think somebody's getting knocked out probably in the first 5 minutes. I do lean towards Nolan, but we'll definitely talk about Mota later on. Moving on to the Prize Picks Play of the Week. If you guys want to check out Prize Picks, use promo code DFSBTN. Get yourself a 100% deposit match up to $100. It helps me. It helps you. It's free money. This week's Play of the Week is going to be Manel Kape. Fantasy score, I'm going to take the more here. I think he finishes Nicolau. Nicolau's been finished in all 3 of his losses. I don't like the durability of Nicolau. I think we're getting a much different version of Kape. I think Kape's going to be much, much, much more aggressive than he was in their first fight, and I think that aggressiveness is going to lead to a brutal finish in the first or second round, and if that's the case, he's going to smash this more here at 85.5. So give me Kape, taking the more on the fantasy score, 85.5. If you guys want to check it out, go to Prize Picks, use promo code DFSBTN, and get yourself a 100% deposit match up to $100. Live dogs, and I'll be honest, guys, I'm not liking a ton of dogs this week. I'm really not. And even like one of the few dogs I'm picking, I'm not even talking about from a DraftKings perspective, because I don't really like that fight from a DraftKings perspective. But here's some live dogs that, if they go out there and they win the fight, they're going to score very well. The first one being Phil Hawes. And Phil Hawes has to be on here because he's absolutely a live dog. You can argue, and a lot of people are arguing, that he probably should be the favorite this week. Phil Hawes is better in every single aspect of MMA outside of durability, and that durability is key, and that's why I'm picking Ferreira. But if Phil Hawes is able to come out here and either A, his durability holds up this time around, or B, maybe switches it up a little bit, maybe fights a little bit smarter, maybe goes out there and wrestles, maybe doesn't take a ton of chances, right? Maybe fights a little bit differently. Maybe Hawes can go out there and pull off the upset. So yeah, Hawes, you're getting the better fighter at an underdog price tag. I don't hate it, but at the same time, I really worry about his durability against this guy, Ferreira. Preston Parsons, 7,800. Yeah, this is a great live dog here. Parsons, like if he wins, he's going to put up a massive score. I think he has probably one of the best, if not the best, upside as an underdog here. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out, kind of the same thing with Phil Hawes. But, Parsons has a path to victory here. And that path to victory is taking down Semelsberger, who has about a 50% takedown defense. Semelsberger's shown to be taken down, shown to be controlled. And if Parsons gets on top, he's extremely active with his submission attempts. Like, I think Parsons, within the first 3 fights of his UFC career, has attempted something like 8 submissions. I mean, it's ridiculous. So if Parsons is able to get this to the mat, he's very live to not only win this fight, but potentially sub Matt Semelsberger. And at 7,800, I think he's a very good live dog with some upside. I love that fight from a DraftKings perspective. Gaston Bolaños, he has 7,100. A very live dog in Bolaños, and it all comes down to me, the game plan of Marcus McGee. If Marcus McGee goes out there and does what he does in every single fight, right, and that is going to be striking with Gaston Bolaños. Bolaños is going to be very, very live. Bolaños is a striker. That's his bread and butter. The big hole in the game of Bolaños is the grappling. He has terrible takedown defense, a terrible ground game. But, I'd never really seen Marcus McGee shoot a takedown, which that could change here, and that should change here. But if Marcus McGee goes out there and tries to strike with this guy, Bolaños is going to be very live, in my opinion. So we'll see. It all comes down to the game plan of McGee. But Bolaños, 7,100, I think is a live dog. Felipe Buñez, 7,400. I believe this is going to be the first fight of the night here, and it's a banger. Got Buñez, 7,400, making his debut at 34, but this guy's dangerous. He's very dangerous wherever the fight goes, especially if the fight gets to the mat. I believe he's a black belt in BJJ. Joshua Van has one loss on his record, that only loss coming by submission. So in theory, if Buñez is able to get this fight down to the mat, maybe he's able to sub Joshua Van. On the feet, I do worry about Buñez here. I love the volume of Joshua Van. I love the power, the way he mixes it up to the body, Joshua Van. But like I said, Buñez does have some power as well. But in my opinion, for Buñez to win this fight, he probably needs to get it down to the mat. And if he does, he's a very live dog. Moving on to the pump plays here, Johnny Walker sitting at 6,800, my bad, typo there, 6,800 for Johnny Walker. And yeah, don't love the main event, but hey, if Johnny Walker wins, it's probably like a first round or second round knockout, probably very low owned as well. I don't hate some shots on, the underdog in the main event here, but it's not something I'm completely in love with. Nicholas Mota, 7K, I think he does make a decent amount of sense going against a very unproven Tom Nolan who hasn't really fought anybody. And a guy in Tom Nolan who leaves a lot of openings, who's there to be hit, there to be countered. Nicholas Mota does one thing well, and that's he hits like a truck. So yeah, I think Nicholas Mota could potentially pull off the upset here and land a big shot. Of course, we worry about the durability, we worry about the confidence of Mota, but that's why he's 7K here. Fade is going to be Farid Basharat. I'm pretty much fading this entire fight. Basharat, Lapilus. This fight's like minus 250, 260 to go the distance. I don't see how this fight makes the optimal lineup on a card where we're going to get a ton of finishes. Like, we have fights to end inside the distance lined at minus 1,600 this week. We have a ton of high scores this week, and I think this fight probably does go the distance. And if it does, I'm not sure Basharat's going to outscore some of these other guys up there, like a Tom Nolan, a Gene Silva, a Marcus McGee, a Semmelsberger, a Acosta, so on and so forth. I think a lot of these other guys get finishes, Manel Kopp even Ankalaev as well. So yeah, I'm not too high on Basharat this week, not too high on the fight to begin with, or not too high on the fight as a whole. But there you guys have it. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out Prize Picks. Use promo code DFSBTN. Check out DFSbythenumbers.com or Patreon as well. Same content, just a different platform. There, everything is uploaded for the week. The stats, targets, projections, ownership projections, the rankings. I just got out my DFS article as well. Prize Picks article is out. So yeah, all the content's ready to go. Looking forward to some UFC Vegas 84. Best of luck, guys. Like on your way out, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. See you later.